just didn't want a life without God. I mean, I like I said like earlier, I'd felt His presence so much, and I've seen Him work so much in my family's life and my life, just being on The Voice, like making it all the way to that show. I've always found peace in Jesus with what I do, especially at the beginning, because it was, it's kind of rocky, it's hard, it's a lot of pressure as a 17, 18-year-old. I mean, I grew up in the industry. I'm about to be 30 this year. And to think that, I look back and I didn't handle everything perfectly, but um, one thing that kept me from not going completely insane, like some people do in the industry, is the love of Jesus, and the fact that I had something bigger to hang my hat on, and that wasn't a career, but that was my relationship with God.
And welcome back to another episode of the Made to Shine Show. I am so tickled excited because I have someone on whose music I've been listening to since I was in college. I'll have to tell you that story on the podcast, RaeLynn. But anyways, all that to say, you are just been such an inspiration to me from afar.
Thank you.
And now from up close, just getting to know you even more. I mean, you're a singer, you're a songwriter, you're a wife, you're a mom. And I told you this, and I meant it before we hopped on. The reason I wanted you on is because we believe every single person has a ministry on this podcast. It's not just preachers and pastors. It's the way you shine your light in all spaces God has to do with. And from afar, you've done that so well with all you do. And so I'm excited for the audience to hear up close a little bit about your story today. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. Well, you know what? To start off, I believe that. I have all my family is in ministry, and I grew up going to church, and obviously I still do, but I never felt called to, quote unquote, being a pastor or being a worship leader. But I, in some ways, like, and when I started doing country music, I'm like, this is what I'm called to do, like to be a light in a place that not a lot of people maybe want to be a light. But he put up a desire in my heart at a very young age to do country music. And, I think I see the fruit of like being in this field, especially like, it's not always easy, but listen, I'm not perfect. The Lord's working on me every single day.
As he is all of us.
All of us. But I will say, like, you don't, I love that that's the message of this podcast, because you don't have to, wherever you work, whatever you do, it can be your ministry, and you can shine the light of Jesus. It doesn't have to be, in the four walls of church.
It's so true. I think we forget about that. Like even Paul made tents. He was a tent maker by trade, but he was like doing ministry. And I think we confine God to sometimes the walls of a church, but it's like, oh no, God is everywhere and everything. And so excited to dive into that, but we've got to kick this off the way I do every single episode, which is, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote and why? Oh my gosh. I haven't thought about a quote in a long time.
Or a lyric, since you're a songwriter.
Lyric, quote. I mean, I listen to so much Peter Crone. I love Peter Crone. He has one about like, you can't, oh my gosh, I can't remember it right now. I'm going to butcher it, but it's basically like, you can't change the past because it is what it is. All you can do is focus on the future. And I think especially as like a Christian or somebody that's following the Lord, I think we always we think we hear clearly. And sometimes like if I make the wrong step, maybe it's in music, or maybe it's the way that I treated somebody, or maybe it's the way that I reacted to something, I always want to go back and change it. And I'm like, oh, if I could have done this better, if I could have walked on this path, but that happened for a reason, and all you can do is focus on the future and not getting caught up in the past of just whatever happened. And I think that's one thing that's always kind of helped me persevere, because I've had a lot of friends that have lived in the past or been like jaded from certain things not working out the way they wanted it to.
Yeah.
And it's put a lot of, hurt in their heart, resentment in their heart. And it's like, I truly do believe that everything happens for a reason. And so
Mm.
that's probably one of my favorite quotes, because I do try to always live in the present and not second guess the decisions that I've made.
I mean, and that's scripture. You know what I mean? It's like, don't worry about tomorrow because tomorrow has enough worries for itself. And I think that the
Yeah.
flip side of that is true as well, which is like, don't dwell on the past because God will work everything together for the good of those who love and honor and glorify Him. And I think, there's the power of reflecting to learn, but not
Yep.
getting stuck there, because you can also glorify the past, like, oh, the good old days, versus like, oh, this happened and this is like
Yeah.
victimizing yourself. And I'm curious for you. I know I read that you came from kind of a more traditional church background, but you mentioned like you wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for God. And I think going back to like RaeLynn as a young girl, like how were you introduced to Jesus? Was it a little bit more traditional, or how did you build that personal relationship with Him?
I mean, I grew up in church, so I've been always around like God and the presence of Jesus. I think I have had like two experiences with Jesus. So I would say when I was younger, I mean, I saw signs, wonders, miracles. I grew up in a Pentecostal church, like speaking in tongues, all the things. Not a
Wow.
lot of people know that about me, but so I saw like people be healed right in front of my eyes. I saw, people's lives that were maybe bound with like a lot of demonic spirits and stuff like that be completely set free right in front of my eyes. And so when you see things like that as a kid, you don't like forget it. I mean, I can still remember today the things that I've seen. And I felt the presence of Jesus at a very young age. I mean, I welcomed Jesus in my heart when I was a little girl, and I got baptized when I was like 11. But fast forward, when you move out, you get your own place, you're not around your family, you're independent, and you figure out your relationship with God yourself.
Yeah.
And that is my favorite part of my relationship with God, was the one after my family, and after they had to wake me up and be like, "Hey, we're going to church in the morning." No, I had to wake myself up and go to church. I had to make the decision every day, like when I wasn't, spending time in God's word. I was the one that felt that. Like,
Mm.
I realized the discipline of being a Christian, like why that was brought up in my, and like as a kid. It's because we do need Him.
Yeah.
And I think it's really special when you find that for yourself, because I don't pray to God because I have to. I pray because I want to, and I need Him, and I don't want a life without His presence and without His will. Um and His will's not always what we think it should be, which is
Mhm.
hilarious.
Amen.
But I think that's probably, you know, the most special part of my relationship is now that I'm older and now that I'm married, and especially now that I have a daughter.
That is so I think so many girls can relate to where you were in
Yeah,
this that like you get to this point where you have to graduate from, okay, am I doing this because I'm being told to do this, or am I choosing? My church calls it like I now have a faith of my own,
yeah,
like middle school ministry. And I love that verbiage because it's like a faith of your own. It's like it's not your parents telling you to do
yeah.
this, school telling you to do this. So talk me through like, because you went from a small town in Texas to
Mhm.
and so that's, I mean, I even, right, you went from small town Texas to LA.
Yeah, I went
Okay.
to small town Texas to LA for about a year, and then I went
Yeah.
back to Texas, then went to Nashville, and then went back to LA for The Voice, then moved to Nashville as
Yes. Okay.
well.
So there's a lot of hopping and going. And I know like, I think what's so powerful is this personal relationship with Jesus. It came before The Voice, it sounds like that progression, like the decision to, and so talk to me through like, one, kind of what you were feeling. Cause I think so many girls right now, they are in that experience of they're having to decide for themselves. Like, do I pursue this because I want to or because I'm told to? What were some of the things you recognized why you needed prayer, why you needed Jesus, that like made you to want to have a faith of your own versus looking at it as just this list of rules you had to abide by. Because I think so many people look at Christianity like that.
I think I don't know, I just didn't want to live without God. I mean, I like I said like earlier, I'd felt his presence so much and I've seen him work so much in my family's life and my life, just being on The Voice, like making it all the way to that show. I was already like, holy crap, I'm 17. I'm made it onto one of the biggest shows on national television. Only God could do this. Like I'm from Baytown, Texas. Like this just doesn't happen to a girl like me. And I had already seen God have his hand on me at that age. And so I was just like, I can't give up on him now. Like I gotta keep, he's the reason why I have all this, and, and I just think for me, I've always found peace in Jesus with what I do, especially at the beginning, because it was, it's kind of rocky. It's hard. It's a lot of pressure as a 17, 18-year-old. I mean, I grew up in the industry. I'm about to be 30 this year. And to think that, I look back and I didn't handle everything perfectly, but one thing that kept me from not going completely insane, like some people do in the industry, is the love of Jesus and the fact that I had something bigger to hang my hat on, and that wasn't a career, but that was my relationship with God and the legacy that I wanted to build outside of my career, which is to be a mom and a wife. My dream ever since I was a little girl was like, I'm going to be on a tour bus and you're going to open the door and toys are going to fall out and I'm going to travel the world with my husband and my babies and stuff. Like that's been the end goal for me. And so, when I first wanted to get married, like my label at the time was just like, no, don't get married. It's going to ruin your career and all these things. And I was like, well, screw you. I'm getting married. I love my husband. Like I'm telling you, like, and if I make a mistake, I make a mistake, but give me the lane to make a mistake, but you can't tell somebody not to get married. Like, but I did. And I'm so like, that's one example. Cause I mean, me and my husband are about to celebrate 9 years and I'm so grateful.
Congratulations.
Can you imagine if I would have listened to them and didn't do what God had for me? Like, and I think about my marriage and my husband, Josh, who's my best friend, like he has helped me through so much of my career and navigating the pain, navigating the success, navigating, because it's the highs, lows. Like it's low, it's low, it's high, it's high. This industry is never like this, And I have friends with multiple number ones who are still the most miserable people. So it's like it's truly about your mindset of like, oh, okay, like my identity is not in this. My identity is in God and is in, the fact that I'm a good person, the fact that I love my friends well. Like this is the orbit that I can control. And but yeah, I mean, so one big thing for me was just, okay, I have my career over here, but I really want to be a wife and a mom. And because this is the legacy that's going to last forever. It's not, I mean, my music hopefully lasts for a while, but it's Daisy. It's our future kids. It's, the wife that I was and the sister and the daughter and all those things. So
that is so good. It's so funny. I was before this recording of my like solo podcast, and I was talking about calling and how like why like how it's hard. You're not called to just one thing. And sometimes it can get hard because you're like, God, I feel called to be a wife, but I also feel called to be a singer, but I also feel called to be a mom. It's not like your life just fits into these neat little boxes that
no,
we all
it doesn't
fit our life into. And I love how you said like your biggest rebel move was getting married at 21 years old. And as I was talking to a guest on the podcast last night, who's a country singer in Nashville, her name's Stephanie. And she was saying like, there's two things they always say in this industry when you get here, like one, don't talk about your faith. And to don't have a boyfriend.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's so, because I mean, I'm obviously not a country singer, so that was very interesting to me. But I think a lot of girls can relate in the aspect of, I know I've struggled with this in the past, kind of being sold this message that you can either as a woman have an awesome career or be an awesome mom and an awesome wife. And I'm curious, like, what I love about you is you're such a testament to the goodness and the wholeness of God. Like, if God calls you to all these things, he's going to supply you
With everything that you
with
need.
everything. So
Yeah.
talk to me about that, and how, like, if there's
Mhm.
such thing as balance, or like how you're able to excel in
Yeah.
all these different areas.
Well, obviously, I have a lot of help. I've, we have family that lives here, and I also have a girl that helps me 3 days a week with Daisy. But I would say the first thing is I'm not afraid to say no.
Mm.
It's about quality over quantity for me. When I first came to town, I'd be like, yes, 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 yes. But no, I only have somebody that helps me with Daisy a couple days a week, and on those days, I can schedule a ride or whatever, but if you need to take a meeting with me on the other days, like my child's coming with me. And I think that's a big thing for me too, is on days that I didn't have school growing up, my dad would take me to the tire shop. Like work
Mm.
didn't stop because I didn't have school. And so, I really want to bring Daisy into my life. I don't want her to think that, she just stays at home while mommy works. Like, because we are a team. Our whole family's a team. It's me, Josh, and Daisy. We all work together. And
Mm.
so I take her with me to meetings, and she's such a versatile kid because of that. But I would say the balance is, I've first of all, my family always comes first. If Daisy's sick, something's gonna be canceled. Like
Mm.
unless somebody can help and she's like on the end of something and I have a show. But like for the most part, like if I don't feel peace about it, I don't do it. I don't care how much money I'm getting paid. I don't like
Yeah.
family, her and Daisy are first, and I know that if I honor that, that the Lord will bless that.
Mm.
And truly, like I'm not gonna if something's wrong with my kid. I mean, and two, this one thing I will say, the relationship that I have with my fans, they they love like when you say, "Hey, I got to stay back because of this, this, and this." They respect you for it, like,
Yeah.
and because they're moms too. And I think it's all
Mhm.
about what kind of relationship you have with your fans. And I really do have really great fans. They're mostly moms. They're mostly women of God, and so they understand that pull and tug. But I would say the main thing is the support. We have really a lot of support here. And there's days it's a little crazy. I'm gonna, get done with this and hang with Squeebs and then go to a vocal and then come back, and it's just a little bit of pinball machine. But I personally love it, and I like the the go of it all.
I I think what you illustrated there is something that's so powerful, which is a lot of times people, when they think of how do I balance this all, they think of time management. But what you're saying is it's priority management.
Yeah.
It's like if you have your priorities straight, then time will be made. But it's like you've got to know. It was so cool. I had a guest on. He's got a cool story. He's a homicide detective and like investigated the gospels. And but he was saying like there's three things that he says you've got to have your priorities straight. The first is your worldview. Like, do you believe in God or not? The second is marriage. Like if you can like choose and continue to choose someone, like this is my partner, I'm choosing them. Then after that is mission. Like, what do you want to do with your life?
Hmm.
And I think that kind of so parallels what you were saying is like, okay, your worldview, you grounded yourself in Jesus, and then your family, that's your team. Like that's your marriage. That's the marriage of the people you're with. And then comes your mission. And I think that's so powerful. It's like from your, if you look at your life as like a cup, you can pour out into what you do because you're
Yeah.
with your family. And I love that. And I want to speak to also like to go back to a little bit because I do think we've got to talk about the voice because
Yeah.
just that was such a big part of your story. And I didn't even realize that they weren't about to let you through because you were a minor. I didn't realize that when I was looking. So I'm curious, like, kind of talk through the story of that because I feel like a lot of people don't know that part. But also, you said there was just this like that boldness you had to just kind of like go anyways. I'm curious where that, like, if you think that was the spirit or if you've always been super bold like that or where that came from.
Well, I mean, I've always been super bold, but I think that God created me to be bold and to
Mhm.
be like a little crazy. Like I've just always been like, okay, well, let's just do it. Like, I'm like, why are we
Okay,
not?
you're
Like,
like
who
me.
can't?
I always joke, so people are like aim, shoot, fire. I'm a fire kind of girl. Like we're just
Yeah.
gonna fire and then recalibrate how it did not work out.
So what happened was, is I was in, hey, bud. I was in Nashville recording and or writing, and my my cousin was with me, and she is not my legal guardian. So when I auditioned in Nashville, they basically were saying that he like she like so I made it through. So no, I'm sorry, they were basically trying to say that I couldn't do this audition, and I was like, nah, man, you gotta let me go through. It was like this big guy at the front door, and he's like, listen, you don't have a proper mind, or you don't. Well, I was like, dude,
And you were 17?
I was 17.
You're
I
17.
said, my parents are, there's no telling. Now looking back, there's no telling how many people, like young girls, come up to this thing. It's like, all right, like whatever. I was like, my parents are in Texas. I'm here with my cousin writing. Like, I'm telling you, I'm gonna make it through. Just let me go through. And he said, like, I remember forgetting. He's little mama. I can't do it. Like, he's like, I'm not gonna do it. And I was like, listen, you've got to. I'm gonna make it. And I begged this guy to let me through. And he's like, you better make it. And then he'd let me go through. And so then I do the audition, and they're like, oh, are you here with your mom? And I was like, no, like I'm here for music. Like I've been writing and stuff. And and she was like, oh, okay. And I was like, I'm here with my cousin. And she's like, well, here you go. Like you're going to Hollywood, but your mom has to fill out all this. Your mom or your dad has to fill out all this paperwork. And I was like, okay. But it was just hilarious because that guy almost did not let me audition. And but after that audition, I made it into the producer audition because there's like 3 auditions before you actually go on television, and
Okay.
then that's the one that was in LA, and that was a wild experience.
Okay. What I love about that story though is I think so many people resistance hits them and they take that as an indication, oh, this might not be from God. If God wanted me to do this, there would be parting of the Red Sea and it would be,
Yeah,
and I would just, there would be no resistance in the way. But for you, it was like, no, there was an obstacle, but you met it with like, hey, no, let me through. So
please.
what do you think the difference is? Like how your relationship with resistance, with a no, with like pushback, kind of describe to me that and how you think it differs from a lot of girls that I feel like are very much like, okay, obviously this is a sign from God. I'm not supposed to do this thing because it
Sometimes,
wasn't.
okay, I sometimes think that people can over spiritualize everything, and
Agreed.
I don't agree with that. Like I think you have a gut feeling if you're supposed to do something or not, which I your gut feeling is God. And I knew that I was supposed to do this. I knew that I was supposed to do this audition.
I love that.
And this guy was my obstacle to get there, and listen, you ain't gonna stop me. So it's like, but I do have friends that like everything's a sign, everything's this, and I'm like, maybe you just hit a red light. You know what I mean? Sometimes
That
like,
is so
and
good.
I think that in your spirit if something is right or not. And I knew that was the right thing. But no, I totally agree with you in that.
I love that. I think too, like a lot of times I think over spiritualizing is another tactic the enemy uses to like
Yeah,
pervert because what it does is it causes us to sit in indecision. Like, should I have done that? Should I not have done that? Girls, do the dang thing because if it was the wrong move, God will show you what the right move was. And
yep,
it's just like figure it out. And so I love that. And I think just keeping things simple, like learning how to just trust yourself. Because you have the spirit of God in you. And so it's like you can listen to your gut feelings and you can fall on that. And if it wasn't the right
absolutely.
move, like we just said, like God uses everything for good for those that honor and glorify him. As long as like you go into something saying like, God, I don't know if this is right, but I want to glorify you in this decision, go for it, girlfriend, or
Yep,
don't. Like just but do something. So I love that. And okay, I want to talk about so in college, it's so funny. My teammate, I played tennis in college in South Carolina. And my anthem, my sophomore year was Queens Don't.
Come
Not
on.
even kidding you. Oh yeah. And it was so funny because we'd be playing like Bon Jovi, and then all of my teammates loved like these hardcore rap songs, but then I'd be like, Queens Don't, and we'd be turning that on. And it was the best. And all my teammates, we would just rock it in the van.
I
And
love it.
you kind of wrote this about, you had a quote around this, but it was somebody who really has a heart of royalty is somebody who truly loves somebody for who they are, and they act with a heart of humility, and they serve other people. And I'm curious, like that word humility really struck me because like queens don't, a queen, when people think queen, they think of like flashy and bold, and like we were talking like all this glitz and glam, a lot of like parts of what your life look like right now.
Mhm.
But the ultimate like royalty is humility. It's servant leadership. It's what was showed to us again this weekend with Easter, like what Jesus did for us. And so talk to me about your life right now, like the importance of remaining humble and how that has kind of intertwined with how you absorb success and your continued success and not burning out.
Well, one of my favorite people in the whole wide world is my mother-in-law. I'm married into probably one of the best families in the whole wide world. And I was talking to her, and I was kind of having a woe is me day.
Mm.
And, because everything is about me sometimes. That's just how it is when you're a girl.
Mhm.
And she said, hear me out. She was like, and I think she was kind of not nervous, but like, we had just started like, this is a couple years of us being married. And I don't think she, at this time we were still like, we were close, but we weren't as close as we are now. Now, she'll tell me anything, but she said, when you start to feel, a little selfish, or like you're upset, or like the world is not going the way that you want it to go, and not saying you're not validating your feelings, just like, this is, she said, go do something for somebody else. Go take care of somebody else. Go love on somebody else. Go serve somebody else. And I'm telling you, it'll fix everything in your heart when it comes to that. And I think that's one thing that I have carried in my life, and is like, queen's not somebody who has a bunch of crowns or a bunch of, jewels on their crown, even though that's what we want for when we go to heaven. But you know what I mean? Like, it's not somebody who has a lot of flashy things. It's somebody who treats somebody with respect. It's somebody who loves other people, who thinks about other people over themselves, and the way that I view it. And when I start getting kind of caught up in the industry and caught up in, oh no, this is the way I should be treated, it's like, you know what? No, that's fine. Like, I should be treated that way. And I'm not saying you shouldn't stand up for yourself, but I'm going to just love people and do this over here, and then it'll all fall into place. And I think that's one of the best ways to get out of a self-inflicted funk, is to serve and love other people.
I love how you said, like, you mentioned that point about should be treated. Like sometimes I was talking to someone the other day who is having a hard time with their boss, and just
Yeah.
like feel like I'm not being treated the way I should be with what I do for this team, all this stuff. And I felt like, and this is advice I need to take on my own so many times, but oftentimes like what humility could look like in that situation is recognizing like you are having to submit under to authority, but like learning how you don't want to act when you
Yeah.
are in a place of leadership one day. Or if someone treats you poorly, it's like being humble enough to take that as a learning lesson. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm such a believer the world is our university. It's like everyone does something, and we can learn something from everybody. We can also teach something to everybody, and having that humble spirit to absorb and recognize, like, even if you're being treated poorly, like, okay, if anything, this teaches me how not to treat people, because I remember this feeling. And I so believe that too, even like with your music, I'm sure like to be able to write songs that are so powerful and connect on, because there's music and then there's music, like there's music with a catchy beat, and then there's music that speaks to your heart. And like the songs you write, like they speak from a place of you get it, like you've been here, it's pain, it's going back. And so I guess talk to me about that, like that process of creation. I'm such a big believer. The gifts God gave us, they're means for us to experience Him. And so,
Mhm.
with your songwriting, with your singing, when you're singing in to these crowds, like how do you experience God, and what have you learned about God through your own process of creation?
First of all, I think connection with people. It's music is a big connector. I mean, I see these songs that I write that obviously God gave me a gift to write. So I write these songs and then I see little girls, women singing them or women being affected, like Broken One, for example. I grew up in a broken home. My parents got divorced when I was 3, and um, I never knew what love would look like for me. I didn't know how, I would handle getting married, and I always felt like, am I kind of like damaged goods? Like, is that, is somebody going to love me even though I've come from a broken home and all these things? And then when I met Josh, he's one of 7 kids, and his parents were married for almost 50 years and now. And I'm like, does he know who he's liking right now? Like that kind of thing. But no, he loved me, and he saw a wife, and he saw a mother, and he
Mm,
saw, you know, and he saw all those things in me that I probably didn't even see in myself, like
mm,
at the time. And so I wrote this song called You Found a Home in a Girl from a Broken One.
mm,
And Broken One's just a great example because when I released it, all these women that, found love after like loss in either a marriage that they had before or growing up in a divorced home, they had their anthem to feel seen. And that's one thing that I always like before I release a song is like, how is this going to make somebody feel seen? Like, how is this song going to touch somebody? And the same thing happened with Made for Me to Love. I found out I was pregnant, and I wrote this song like I had the idea like, it's like I've already met you, already held you. I knew that I loved you before I even met you. Like all those things, and being a mom, and like I didn't become a mom when I gave birth to Daisy. I became a mom when I saw that yes on that pregnancy test you are pregnant. Like
yeah,
that's when the mother and me came out.
yeah.
And I released that song early, and watching so many women make that the soundtrack to, their pregnancy stories, of them having children, the pregnancy losses of losing their child, but still honoring that child's life. Um, that's what keeps me going. I mean,
Love.
it's things like that. And I think one of the first songs that did that for me was Love Triangle. I wrote that song about my perspective of my parents' divorce and how it felt to be stuck in the middle of the 2 people that you love the most, your mom and your dad. And I've had so many. One of my favorite stories was this woman came up to me and she said, me and my husband have been married for 30 years, but he deals with bipolarism and or he deals with being bipolar, and so I felt like I lived in a love triangle with my husband, um, and with my kids. And she said, when I heard you sing the song live about a month ago, because she came to another show, she said, I'd never fully understood where my kid was at with all of our pain, but I felt your pain. And I was able to talk and have that conversation with my child because of Love Triangle. And we've been able to work on a relationship because obviously I'm not going to leave her dad, but we've been able to figure out a way for my child to feel seen, but also for my husband to feel loved.
Mhm.
And I was just like, and I just wrote this on a random Tuesday about divorce, and this is what it's doing. So he really can use the craziest things, and I think, I'm a little bit of a, I always say I'm a little bit more of a rowdy Christian. Like I like to have a good time. I sing country music. I like to dance on stage, but I also know the heart. God knows my heart. He knows the heart behind what I'm doing, and I think that that's super important.
But I think that's what's so beautiful is like you make people feel seen, which inadvertently, whether they are Jesus followers or not, is connecting them with our ultimate desire, which is to feel seen by God. Like to
Yeah.
seen by love itself. And I was reading a book the other day that described God as love, loving. And I love that definition of God.
That's
Like
so
love
sweet.
itself is loving. And I think that that's what your music does. And that's why I'm such a believer, like ministry, like you have a ministry, and it's
Yeah.
you're not a preacher, you're not a pastor, but you have a ministry. Your music's your ministry. If you're a track runner, your running is your ministry. It's like when our gifts are used to experience the connection vertically with God, but then horizontally with other people and bring them back to that vertical connection with God, that's when it gets so cool. And that's when it gets so fun. But I think too, to also to give you credit where credit's due, like that requires you to sink and to go deep and to feel wounds that maybe God has healed. But like I think about when Jesus came back, I always say this because it strikes me so hard, but like when Jesus came back, he could have looked perfect. He could have looked pristine, but he came back with scars to show Thomas, like, so Thomas may believe. And with your music, that's what you're doing. Like you're showing people your scars to point them back to the one who healed them. And that's so beautiful and so powerful. And
Thank you.
I know you've got some new music coming out and you just released Funny Girl. So let's round out with talking about Funny Girl, the inspiration behind that, and then the new music coming out this summer.
Yeah, so Funny Girl is about being the quintessential funny girl. I grew up, being the girl in the back seat, bumping rap music, making everybody laugh in the car. And I was at my house on the back porch riding with one of my really good friends, and I was watching Daisy kind of run around in the house, and Josh was, with her, and we're sitting at our beautiful house on the back porch. I was just kind of soaking everything in, and I was kind of thinking about that my younger self, and I was just like, man, life ain't mean. It's just funny, girl. Like all those trials and things that I went through as a kid, and finding my place in a friend group, and figuring out who I was as a woman, as a girl, as a young woman, getting older. If she could see the life that she has now, she'd be so freaking proud. And so I wrote that song to my younger self, and it's been such a great, like, just testament. And I think that it's such a great example. There's so many people that have really I have a very big personality, and sometimes but some people don't understand, like, I am pretty chill sometimes too. Like, I feel like I'm pretty chill today. But when I'm ramping it up and I'm doing it, like, that's another side of me too. But just because you're that girl doesn't mean you have to perform all the time. And I think that's one thing that, as I've gotten older, like, I always was on. Like, I'm always like telling jokes and duh. But it's like, no, sometimes you can just not be on and just chill. And like, that's okay too, And so that's kind of where that song came from. And then we just recorded 3 more songs, and they'll be coming out this summer that I'm really excited about. It's going to be definitely a new vibe in a good way. So I can't wait for the fans to hear.
What you just said, I can so relate to, because I also can be a lot. And like younger Annie was always told, like, Annie, you're being too much. Like, you need to tone it down. Like, this isn't the place to be that. And all that to say, I can also be chill sometimes, but I think I can relate to the performance aspect. Like, I associated my worth with my ability to make other people happy. And so I always felt like I had to be on and happy. Yes. And I wouldn't let myself be sad because I felt like I wasn't allowed to. Like, my job was to be on. And there's a song I love called The One You Love. And it's like, I'm the one you love, me without the talent, me without the performance. And that's been an anthem in my heart, because it's like, God loves all of you, the chill sides, the cranky sides, the woe is me sides, the I'm on top of the world sides. Like, God loves all of you, and he made all of you. And I think sometimes we're so shocked by our bad days, our off days. It's like, God creates space for that. And so even Jesus got tired. Even Jesus wept. I mean, just, and I love that. And it's so true. And it's so funny. The last question on this podcast is always, what advice would your younger self, so like young RaeLynn, give today RaeLynn, which kind of coincides with Funny Girl well?
That's funny, because it's normally, what would you say to your
I know, it's the opposite, but I think we're called to have childlike faith. Like, there's such power in remembering the advice our 10-year-old selves would tell us today?
I think she would just say, "I love you and you're doing great." Like, look at this. I know my younger self, like the Lord, like just even the house we moved in. Oh my God, you got a pool! Like, oh my gosh, I love this. Or like, your kid's so cute. Like, she would just be like so jacked for me. Like, and I know that, and that gets me excited for sure.
Yeah, we gotta connect with that excitement more, like that
Yeah,
genuine, like, I get to do these things each day. Like, I think about my life right now. I feel like younger Annie would be like, "You get to do that? You get to talk
yeah,
to someone like RaeLynn? Like, that's so cool." And instead of like, I have to do this, I have to
yeah.
be like, it's just no, you get to do this, and that's what's cool about it. RaeLynn, you're amazing. I just think the world of you. My tennis team is going to freak out when I send them this recording link.
Oh,
But truly, like, your music is inspiring so many people.
thank you.
You're a light in all spaces, and just thank you for being on the show today and shining it
And
here.
thank you for having me, and anytime. I appreciate it. Come to a show.
Yay! And I hope that this blessed you and encouraged you, reminded you that God gave you a unique light, and it is your job to shine it in this world because we need you to. That being said, if you were blessed by this message and you can think of anybody else that also needs this type of encouragement, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, leave me a comment. It helps me out a lot and helps this message that I do believe God gave my heart to share with the world gets out. I hope you have such an amazing rest of your day.